Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer Podcast. Thomas Vick here. Seth Wilson also here. Seth, how's it going today?
All present and accounted for. So that's a good day right there.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Today, Seth, I thought we would talk about bottlenecks in a law firm. I've kind of been thinking about this kind of issue that comes up from time to time. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in a law firm, and sometimes it stacks up. And how do we approach the situation if work does begin to stack up? A lot of times, we're talking about helping lawyers launch, and that is addressing how do I get, clients in the door? How do I get the phone ringing? But part of the life cycle of a law firm is the work that gets done. You might get to the point where you're pretty good at bringing cases in the door, but how do you get them out the door? Um, you know, as much attention as you put into bringing clients in, you really need to give the same amount of attention in getting individuals out the door and finished and wrapped up, so that you can really open yourself up to more opportunities to help more clients. So I thought we would kind of talk about that. I think one of the first things that I would bring up about this topic is having awareness of what's happening in your law firm, having the ability to take a survey of your law practice and understand all the different matters that you have at any given time. Well, a particular matter may not be moving quite as rapidly as you want it to be. You at least want to make sure that you know where it is and you haven't lost sight of it. I think that's probably the starting point for me, is just have an awareness of the cases that you have in your office at any given time.
I agree, Thomas. I think one thing that I challenge myself to do is sort of that self-assessment of where I'm being the bottleneck. And when you first start out and you're wearing all the hats that you will wear as a law firm owner, you can find yourself being the bottleneck for a lot of different aspects of the firm. And I think that's one thing that, as you're taking assessment of both the case count and the matters that you are working on, you need to understand that each avenue or path that the client is going to take through your office is going to come with it an opportunity for a place to create a bottleneck. And when you're it. You're the bottleneck. I hate to tell you. So you got to understand where your propensity is to procrastinate. And sorry, that's an ethical admonition we have in our Indiana model rules of professional conduct, right? The tendency to procrastinate, and understand where that may become a problem for you in terms of getting a case through the pipeline.
Yeah, that tendency to procrastinate is certainly something that you got to be aware of. Some of that tendency to procrastinate has to do with whether you've gotten paid or not. And actually, you might think, if I'm going to get paid on something I'm working on, that might actually prompt you to work on it. But I actually kind of feel like it's the opposite. If you have already gotten paid on something and you know that it's still there and it's not wrapped up, that actually motivates me more to get it finished. But contrary to that, if I know that I'm billing hourly on a case and it's just a matter of me getting to it and I'm going to get paid on it, it's kind of a security blanket. I know that I'm going to have an account receivable on that matter. And so I tend to procrastinate on those cases. And, over the years, I've begun to notice that about myself. And, recently talked about flat fees. And flat fees, you're hired to do a job, you get the job done really as quickly as you can because you've already gotten paid on it. You're not going to get paid any further by holding on to the case. But if you're still going to get paid for it, yeah, you're going to have more of a tendency to procrastinate, which is maybe not intuitive, but I think over the last 11 years of my practice, that's sort of how I've observed myself behave over the years.
I think that's such an important part of the bottleneck discussion because that also can hold you back from growing as a firm or reaching the potential that you may have. And so if your interests are more aligned with a certain practice area, for example, but you have a lot of cases to still complete from prior commitments, you've got to recognize that you may be the bottleneck for that. And if you're hiring someone new, you may need to leverage that new hire to help you get those cases through the pipeline and out the door, even though that's not the area you want to focus on, or that's not the area that you want the new hire to help you navigate. But that personality understanding, I think, is vital to identifying the potential for bottlenecks and then identifying where they occur and then what to do about them.
Yeah. So what to do about bottlenecks? It might be you just need to stay later at night. Maybe you need to come in earlier. For me, I would rather come in earlier than stay late. So that's kind of what I do. I come in, 2 to 3 hours earlier than everybody else in my office so that I can get things done, get my legal work finished, my really hardcore thinking done before everybody comes into the office. And then I'm ready to cruise through consultations and things like that. But it might be that you have to work longer hours. It might be that you have to reassign some tasks. Maybe you kind of have certain roles that your staff fills, but maybe you need to put some more boots on the ground in this area so that we can kind of release that bottleneck. Maybe it's disengagement letters that we need to get out, put somebody else on the staff on that job so that we can get those moved out the door so that we can close the case. So it might be taking a look at workloads within your office and, reassigning some tasks.
Agreed. I think a big part of that helps eliminate the bottleneck is gaining perspective. And so sometimes just talking about the issue, whatever it may be, I just don't want to do this. I'm not motivated to do this. I don't know what to do in this circumstance. But having that conversation, whether that's with a colleague in the office or maybe even a colleague outside of the office, to where you've calendared the item that needs to get done or the items that need to get done, and you need something to help get that inertia started so you can get through the project. And I think sometimes you build something up in your mind as maybe a bigger issue than it really is. And when you get into it, it actually doesn't take as much time as you were afraid it was going to. And so I think you need to be able to self-regulate in a lot of those areas and also identify as you grow in terms of numbers in your office, what the personality types of your colleagues and your teammates are, and understand, okay, I'm here, I've got 3 hours ahead of you, I'm already in the flow, you're coming in and haven't even had your first cup of coffee yet. I probably don't want to dump all my thinking on you right at that moment.
Yeah.
I'm going to create a bigger bottleneck down the road. And so I think a couple things that really help us over the years have said things like identify the 3 most important tasks for the day. And we know we've got a lot of things to do. We know we have a pipeline, we've got a checklist, and we have a stack of papers that we need to get through or whatever it is. But identify the 3 things that you're going to get done today and bring those to the forefront. And no matter what, I'm not leaving the office today until I have completed these or moved them to where I can't do anything further on them. And you're like, well, only 3. I got a to-do list that's 50 items long. You're not going to get all 50 done. There's only 24 hours in a day anyway. And if you use all 24 hours doing those 50, you're not going to have any energy the next day. So really identifying that. And I think the other phrase that I've heard recently that's kind of commonplace now is the signal to noise ratio. And how much are you actually operating in signal versus just the noise? And we've talked before about the interruptions and things that come in. But those bottlenecks get created by decisions that were made yesterday, the day before, the month before maybe, where, well, I won't do that piece because I don't want to do it. Well, that slipped by the gatekeeper and now is creating a bottleneck down the road. And so that discipline each day to keep things moving or adjusted is really important.
Yeah. Lawyers have a ton of tasks that they have to accomplish when you have a busy law office. And it can be pretty tempting to just pass those tasks on to the next day, the next week. But at some point, you just have to get the task done and say, these 2 or 3 tasks are going to be finished before I leave the office today. No holds barred. I'm gonna do it. So eliminate those distractions. And actually, even today, I have an appeal that I'm working on, and I said basically for the first hour and 15 minutes of my day, I need to go dark. Nobody interrupt me. Let me have this quiet time so that I can focus on this because I need the brain power and the uninterrupted time to make progress on the task that I have to do. So that's kind of how I do it. I tell the staff, "Love you guys, but you can't talk to me right now. I gotta focus on this project." So communicating with your staff that this is a priority, I got to get it done. That's a really helpful thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, and what a great phrase, because the go dark idea, you have to turn off your phone. You have to turn off your devices. You have to shut the door sometimes. There's physical adjustments that you need to make in order to create the room needed to get whatever that focused area is accomplished. And so I think that phrase can be, hey, I got to turn off all the distractions. So turn off the cell phone. When's the last time you turned off your smartphone? Probably not very frequently, yeah. Right? Turn off any non-required applications or computer peripherals that are in the way of getting things done. So you got to set yourself up for that success as well and give yourself the permission to really dive in deep on something and get through it. And know that typically when you're facing a bottleneck, once you kind of get through I sort of created this mess because I'm in charge, then you go, all right, how am I going to get through it? And you got to recognize, I think, that it's a season. It's not going to be like this forever. And you need to make sure that you don't allow the environment to happen again, and you're reducing that potential in the future by the actions you're taking now. Because if you don't solve the underlying issue, you're just going to be facing it again very soon. However long it took to create this particular bottleneck, that same period of time, you're going to be right back where you were. And then it's going to be hustle, 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 get through it, be exhausted, things are going to pile back up. And so you got to figure out what that looks like. And I think some of that can be an indication of we need some more help around here. So we need to get a plan in place for someone to handle this particular aspect of the practice for us.
Tell you what, Seth, this discussion is stressing me out. I mean, because it's everyday kind of stuff. But the idea of tasks piling up, bottlenecks, it's a stressful thing. And that is part of why being an attorney is a stressful thing, because there are a lot of tasks that have to get done. You're talking about, I may have to get some staff. Well, you may not be quite ready to do that, but if you can find some way to delegate a little bit of your workload to somebody, it might be, hey, I need somebody to come scan in some papers for me so that I don't have to take that time to get it into an electronic format. That could help. I'll tell you one service that I have used, and this is something that you would have to get client consent on, but there's a website called Law Clerk where attorneys can post a project, say, hey, maybe I need an operating agreement for a client and I don't really have the time to devote to it. Maybe I can refer that out, delegate it to somebody else, and some other attorney, and might even be licensed in your own state, can assist you with drafting that. And of course, you still have the supervisory role, and you have to do your own due diligence on this. But there have been some projects that I have done where I've gotten the client consent and I, delegated out to a licensed attorney on that website. And just those 1 or 2 projects that I've delegated, I've noticed it's a relief to me to know that there's a pathway forward. But then I also have noticed that immediately, like 4 or 5 cases that I'm working on, move forward in the pipeline to the next stage because I'm not thinking about that one stressful case. I've got that delegated, and I'm able to devote my time to other matters that are also causing the bottleneck. And so just the act of delegating one task kind of helps things move forward. And it might not be referring a case out, but it might be, hey, maybe I need to hire somebody on a temporary basis to do this, or maybe I need to offload this to one of my staff members, and that can help open things up a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a great awareness situation as well. You mentioned just scanning in papers, right? Like there's some of these what I'll call low level tasks that are low priority tasks that get piled up quite literally because, well, I'll get to that tomorrow. I know it's only going to take a couple minutes, but I don't have time to rename it and put it in the file and do all the stuff. Well, that happens over the course of a week, and now you've got 5 times the amount of work that you had at the beginning of the week. And so those then become more overwhelming to even start because you know it's going to take a larger block of time. And there are days when you can't get to it. You have to make those decisions in the moment. We talked about the Eisenhower matrix concept a couple episodes ago. So it's a constant adjustment and readjustment because we don't always know what the next phone call is going to bring, the next email is going to bring, a walk-in client with an issue that needs to be solved on a more immediate basis. How do you keep that pipeline moving? And so I think you're wise to acknowledge the stress that invokes because as you build your practice, there are more and more things to do. And at some level, you're going to be the only one doing them. And at some level, you're going to have other people that will help you do them. And that's going to bring its own level of stress with it and potential for bottlenecks. And so I think as you build what you're building and you're building your system to make sure that your discipline is at its peak when it needs to be, those habits that you build to get things through the pipeline every day are going to be really important for you. And so I think there's a couple things that have always helped me when I think about these kind of things to prevent bottlenecks. Like one is I try to get my inbox through my inboxes every day. And I may not be 100% on that, but I want to be pretty close to 0 on any one of my various inboxes that I have. And for me, that includes both my Outlook email inbox, right? Because we use Microsoft Office 365, but also a electronic inbox and a paper inbox. And so I have an electronic inbox where incoming mail or items get saved to, like court orders and those kind of things. And I have a paper inbox for things that may come in the mail. And my staff will scan those in, but give me the original so I can decide whether we can keep it or shred it or what we need to do. And you feel like some days all you're doing is going from email to physical inbox to electronic inbox back to email and throwing a Teams message and a text message and you keep going around in circles. But those become sort of my bookends. I'll have a block of time in the morning to really work on emails and getting them out the door, and then a block of time in the afternoon to go back through that. And that helps me maintain my billing because I'm able to utilize Clio's Outlook plugin for billing my time and saving and filing those emails automatically. So that's great. And then I just have to have the discipline to go through the physical things because they're fewer and far between. And I know they're already scanned in, but I have to make a decision about them and keep them moving through the office, right? And so I think that's really important to get your daily system and habits and routine established and allow that to help you not become the bottleneck for the rest of the operation.
Yeah, I like your habit, and I think you're a great example of being responsive to email. I've noticed that over the years in talking with you. You know, the thing about clearing out your inboxes, whether it's Outlook or, in Clio or whatever the case might be, is every one of those messages is clutter that you have to think about. If it's piling up, the more clutter you have and the more that you're going to have to think about down the road. There's kind of a peace that comes with clearing out everything when you have an empty inbox and you're able to say, okay, I've done everything that I need to do here. I can go home for the day. That's really, that helps you start with a clear head the next day and start fresh.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that, Thomas, because one of the things I've been personally working on the last several weeks and months is my daily or my evening routine. So before I go home for the day, what do I want to have done to set up tomorrow for, or Monday if it's a Friday, for success? And one thing that I've noticed just as I've gotten older is early in the morning when I get up, I don't really like staring into a computer screen. Like, it's super bright and it's tough. And so you have all these tools available with, night shift and blue light glasses and all these, but it's like, I need to switch things around and not be on screens 24 hours a day. And so I've tried to say, let me do that planning towards the end of the day. So in the morning, I'm not utilizing the computer to plan the rest of the day. I can read out of a real book or a real newspaper, what a concept, or just sit and watch the sun come up and drink coffee and use that time to reflect on what I want to do that day, or do some handwriting on a notepad and a legal pad. And so that's been an adjustment that's helped me kind of create a little bit of breathing room and get some perspective on things, because one of the things that you'll find if you're constantly at inbox zero is that peace is there, provided you've gotten the tasks and the actions somewhere that they're going to come back when you need to. And the email or the PDF file or whatever becomes a reference point for you in the future, and you know where to go find it when you're ready to work on it again. So you can't just file everything away and feel better. Your brain needs to know, okay, that's on a task list. That's in the pipeline. That's going to show up, and I'm going to do something with it at some point in the near future.
Yeah, it reminds me of a point that Jordan Peterson made in, I believe it was the 12 Rules for Life book that came out a few years ago. That book is all about how do you control the chaos in your life. And one of the things he said in there was, if you have a plan to overcome the chaos, that itself is going to bring about kind of a breath of fresh air for you and give you at least some solace in knowing that there's a way to the end. There's going to be light at the end of the tunnel. And so just having a plan in place to get things accomplished is actually a step towards getting them accomplished. So yeah, that's kind of what I do in the mornings. I'm not on a screen necessarily. I might look at the computer to kind of see where I'm at, but I'll write things down in this, it's a weekly, daily, and yearly planner. Write things down, and then I'm able to attack the tasks that I've written down on there. That's a great way to do it. I would suggest other people do that as well. Lots of good stuff there, Seth. I'm sure we could talk for 30 more minutes on it, but I think that about does it for our time today. I encourage everybody to go to Lifetime Legacy Riverside. No, it's lifetimelegacylawyers.com. Help me out with that. I'm messing it up.
It'll all get there. We have and it's something that's fun for what we do. We're not professional podcasters yet. We keep working through this process. And so you can go to YouTube and search up lifetimelegacylawyers.com. If you use that lifetimelegacylawyers.com URL, it will take you to the YouTube page. And I believe we're on the Riverside page at riverside.fm/lifetime legacy lawyers. You can subscribe there. That website is now accepting those subscriptions, so you'll get notice of each time we post, or you can subscribe obviously on YouTube to get notified of new posts and those types of things. But most importantly, I think reach out to us as you have questions or comments. Doing this stuff can be hard, especially when you're starting out and you are starting to get a little overwhelmed. It can be helpful to just have some encouragement through that. So feel free to reach out to us and let us help you launch in a good manner.
Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.
Take care, Thomas.